Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hello, Side Quest pals. My name is Emily Merritt, and I'm the co-host of an indie gaming podcast called No Small Games. We do deep dive reviews on indie titles, as well as discuss indie game news, new releases, demos, and more. But more about that later. I'm obviously a huge fan of indie games, and I have been for many years now. And I am here to talk to you about one of my all-time favorite classic indies, Octodad, Dadliest Catch. Now, many of you have probably heard of, if not already played, Octodad, and know it for its intentionally convoluted and challenging movement controls. Today, I'm gonna try to convince you that it should also be known for its story and themes, and how it does a beautiful job of bridging mechanics with its narrative. We begin with our main character. Octodad is a simple octopus who dresses like a man and loves a woman. He's a family man, but has somehow managed to keep up the ruse that he's a human family man for many years now. For so long, in fact, that he and his wife have two energetic little kids together. Side note, I have a lot of questions about how these kids came to be and the genetic science of it all, but we won't get into that right now. It may seem like Octodad is living the dream, but it's hard out there for a squid. As the player, you help Octodad manage his day-to-day life, putting one tentacle very literally in front of the other. You control both of his quote-unquote arms and legs, left and right, independently to do everything from walking, opening doors and cabinets, to more complex activities like grilling up some burgers in the backyard and mowing the lawn. I personally think this works best as a controller game because I find it a little easier to multitask, switching between controlling the arms and the legs left and right. Although I do believe it was first designed to play with the mouse and keyboard, and let's be honest, it's gonna be hard as heck either way. As you trip, slip, and manage your way around, moving one suctiony limb at a time, Octodad maintains this cool, calm expression of desperation and near panic, which is not for nothing, because any false move you make, causing a ruckus by creating a spill in the supermarket or slipping and falling at the aquarium, etc., can tip off bystanders to your little charade, causing you to have to restart from a save point. It can be a frustrating experience at times, especially when you look out at the supermarket level and feel all the odds have been stacked against you, very deviously and intentionally by the devs, with slippery floors and precariously stacked cereal boxes. It is a minefield of accidents waiting to happen, but I promise, if you can take deep breaths, slow everything down, and to be very, very careful with your movements, you can actually kind of get into a flow state. And then they make you climb an escalator, and I have no advice for that. Just go as fast as you possibly can. Now, while the gameplay is wacky and chaotic, I actually think Octodad's objective is extremely wholesome. All he wants is to support and bring joy to his wife and kids. They are so clearly his whole world, and he will extremely literally bend over backwards to meet their needs. But behind those anxious, tired eyes, you can tell he's wishing that he could be seen and appreciated for who he is, while he continues to give his all to take care of those he loves. Now, I'd like to share a little bit of my own backstory with this game, which I think will give some context for why I love it so much. Believe it or not, Dadliest Catch was not the first Octodad game I ever played. So this was circa 2011. I was a college student with undiagnosed ADHD, trying very, very hard in school, trying very, very hard to keep up a social life, or whatever I had of a social life, and generally feeling like everything was more of a struggle than it felt like it should be. I was starting to explore the world of, the wide world of indie games, which at the time was not that wide, in part because I needed to find games that would run off of my college student laptop, and indies tended to be a little lighter on the system requirements. And I ran across Octodad, the academic project created by a student group that would later become the iconic indie studio Young Horses. Incidentally, you can now get the original student game on Steam for free, just like the original was, and I highly recommend you all go play it. It's, of course, a little rougher around the edges, but I think it's such a cool opportunity to see where such an iconic indie game studio got its start. So when I first ran across Octodad, I had already encountered co-op and similar quote-unquote difficult controls games. But the Octodad student project was the first one I had played that had some semblance of a narrative wrapped around it. And I was really charmed by Octodad. And I didn't realize it at the time, but I think I related a little bit to his experience of the world, feeling like everything was just a little bit harder than you'd think it should be. Maybe for Octodad, a lot harder than you think it should be. And it brought me a lot of joy to see a few years later that Young Horses had stuck together after leaving school and were releasing Octodad Dadliest Catch as a full title. I was delighted getting to see more of Octodad's day-to-day life, his motivations behind the constant struggle, etc. Another bit of personal lore is that the first video game review I ever wrote was covering Octodad Dadliest Catch, and I never got it published. To this day, I'm not even quite sure why I even had a site that was interested in publishing it. I think deep down I was really scared at the time of being found out as a fraud, not legit enough or whatever. And again, Octodad's struggles and fears to be perceived for who he really is continue to feel extremely familiar. I think anyone who's felt like they were trying to squeeze themselves into the box that others made for them, or who is trying desperately to fit in when they feel so incredibly different, might see a little bit of themselves in Octodad. And I'll tell you, it won't make the control scheme or movement any easier, but I do think it will make the challenge far more relatable. Thank you so much for listening, and to the Fun and Games folks for having me. Again, I'm Emily Merritt, and I co-host No Small Games, a podcast all about indie games, along with my dear friend Kater Blossom. Kate and I primarily do deep dive reviews of some of your favorite indie games and some of the biggest new releases in the indie space. We also do monthly indie game roundups where we discuss indie game news and events, do mini reviews of the games we've been playing lately, share demos that we've been checking out and loving, all that good stuff. We also just have a freaking great time together, so if you love indie games, please go check us out. You can find us at nosmallgames.com. No Small Games is on all your favorite podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, even ones I've literally never heard of. We're also on Blue Sky, Instagram, and Patreon, and we would absolutely love to hear from you. Until next time, happy gaming!
Welcome to No Small Games, the indie gaming recap and review podcast. I'm Kate, also known as Kater Blossom.
And I'm Emily. You might also know me online as The Specific Egg.
And we met streaming and playing video games on Twitch.
At No Small Games, we combine our favorite genres to experience everything the indie game world has to offer and share it with all of you. We believe there are no small games, only small game studios.
Each episode, we'll choose one indie game that we each played separately and discuss our playthrough experience together.
The good, the bad, and our most memorable moments. We'll follow our recap with a review and announcement of which indie game will be featured on our next episode.
We invite you to play each game along with us and would love to hear from you about your playthrough experience.
Hey, Kate.
Hey, Emily.
I hope that No Small Games brings everyone some big fun.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.